Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome to your next Android tutorial. Now, in the last set of tutorials we did a basic JSON request using Volley, and I got a few questions, or a question I suppose, asking can you do Volley only with JSON? So I've decided to do an extra little kind of an extension to the Volley library tutorials, going through custom requests with Volley and what other requests are available. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look inside the Volley library. Now, the package com.android.volley is all this kind of stuff here. These are things we don't need to look at. The big one we're looking at is in the toolbox. Now the toolbox is where it allows you to provide various things, and these are just pre-made classes for you. So disk-based cache, for example, is for caching. We're not going to do that. But the big thing we're looking at here, see this is there's an image request, JSON array request, JSON object request, JSON request, string request. So if we take a look in a string request, the string request extends the request string, and we have a constructor. You just have a constructor, listener, error listener. So we have two constructors here. Deliver response and response, parse network response, which are overridden methods. So what we're actually going to do is, looking at this, we're going to make our own version of a request. So the Volley library is very extendable. You simply extend the request, put in the object type you want, and away you go, and then you can just handle it here, and that's what you return. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to make a new project as usual. And this is going to be custom Volley request. Android 2.3 Gingerbread. It doesn't matter. We're going to ignore everything anyway. Launch icon. Blah 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 blah. Usual nonsense. Let's get a project up and running. Okay, so now we've got this. Perfectly fine. We've got a text view. So what we want to do is I'm actually going to do a custom request for a byte array. So we're going to custom request the byte array, and then in the app we're going to actually parse down the byte array into a string. Most of the time all the things you'll need are there, but if you want to do an XML request, for example. So now we've got our project going, I'm actually going to start up my emulator. So we'll start up the 7-inch tablet as usual, start scale display. In fact, I'm actually going to create a new one. No, I won't bother. I was going to create the new Nexus 7 with the higher resolution display, but it's no point. I've increased the screen size a little bit, so that's that on the run. Okay, so we have that working. We're going to set an ID quickly on this here, just be okay. ID set. So let's start by also adding our permission to the Android manifest. So permissions, add users permission. Then over on the right you select internet. There we go. Save that, and if we go into the actual manifest we'll see our users permission internet. Okay, good. So now we've got all that going. We're going to create our custom request object. So we're going to go through this. So we're going to create a new class file, and we're going to call it byte array request. If any of you are looking to how to install the Volley library, take a look at my other tutorials. So the super class we're going to define. No, sorry, I forgot something. We need to add Volley as a library, so we're going to go down here to our Android, add Volley. Apply, done. Otherwise it won't show up, so I've got that. So we're going to call it byte array request, and we're going to superclass request or subclass request. So request com.android.volley. Yep. Finish. Now, if you look at it here, it says request T. This is because this class is type sensitive, or you have to define what the request will return, because the request is a general thing. The request object or class is a general one that will work for any object. So every request object has to be subclassed. It's a bit confusing how it works, but every single custom request, including the ones pre-packaged in the Volley toolbox, have to tell the request object what object you want to return. So it returns the response, and then you override it and generate that object yourself. It's a bit mad. Show you how it happens. So the object we want is a byte array, like so. And then we add our constructor. So we want int string error listener. Add unimplemented methods. So we have a response and deliver response. So we've got this here, okay? We've got our string, our error listener. Now in the Volley request, if we remember how it worked, was we passed in a error listener object, a listener, a response object, or yeah. So we made a custom response object. This is getting a little bit confusing to explain, but essentially we're passing in here this error listener, which the error listener was an object which contained the code to run in case of an error. That's default. That always has to be passed in for a request. So all the error handling is abstracted away. That's how it works in Volley. Our method and our URL. So anyway, this here will pass up that to the request object, or the superclass of request, and it'll handle all that. When it works, if the request was successful, the network response, if it was successful, this will fire. This response parse network response method here. Now, see the way here, look, it's response byte. So essentially we're going to return a byte array from our response. So we're going to get the data from the response, make it into a byte array, return it from this here. So this is how you would parse something. If you wanted to make a JSON request or an XML file, let's say you want to parse down the network response, it's an XML, into an XML document object. You would do the parsing in here, and the great advantage of this is this method is not run on the main thread, it's run on the background thread, while deliver response is. So by creating custom responses, you get more parallelism, and your app will feel more responsive, rather than, you know, getting a big string and then doing all the parsing on the main thread. Takes too much time. If we do it on the background thread, it will take less time. And then we deliver the response here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into main activity, and we're going to define an interface in here, okay? We need to define an interface. Public interface. And we're going to call this byte array response listener. Okay, and in this we need to have our abstract method public void on byte array response. Okay. Oh, hang on, sorry. It's brackets for that. So we've defined our interface, okay? So our byte array response listener object, well, we're creating an interface which you have to implement. But, well, we're not going to implement it, we're going to create the interface as its own little object, prototype it, now we're going to send it in. So anyway, this byte array response listener, we're going to add this to the constructor here, and then like so. Now we'll have to import this from our other file, which is fair enough. So what we've done is we're modifying the constructor to handle we're also making a custom success response. Little bit mental. In fact, this here needs a byte array in here. Like so. So now we've got this. Now what we want to do is we want to store this in the object. So when as the request is being made and blah 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 is happening, we want to restore this byte listener object for later use down here. So we're going to create kind of just copy and paste this little bit of code. And then we're just going to say byte listener. Not byte listener, sorry. Okay, so we're good to go with that. Now, we've got that ready to go. So now what we want to do is we want to parse our network response and return our byte array, which comes in here. And how we're going to do that is we're just going to say byte. Okay, byte array data equals response dot data, which is essentially the data field in the response object is a byte array. So we're just going to pull that out and then return data. What? Hang on a second, this is mixing me up now. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I figured out what I've done wrong. You don't return the data exactly. You have to return a request object or a response object using the type byte. This is just something I've mixed up. So we're just going to do a quick check here if the data is equal null. Return response. Dot. God damn it, I always spell response wrong. Return response, success, and then that's the data we're returning there. And the cache entry is this line here. Now, in case you wonder where I pulled this line out, that's actually from one of my own apps I'm working on. But this response.success object, if we look inside the Volley library again, we can find this piece of code. So if we look in here into JSON object request, for example, okay, see the way here, look, it creates a new JSON string and return that response.success JSON object string. So this is where I'm pulling it from, and you have to parse the HTTP headers with it. And then if there's an error, we return response.error. So and the error will just be a new parse error or a new Volley error. And that's it. Yep, that's all we do. So if there's an error, that'll tell the thing there's an error and it'll fire off the error listener. So if the data comes back malformed, for example, so this is where you'd handle malformed data. So let's say the data comes back and the XML file has a couple of hitches and problems in it. The data is malformed, it would fire off a try-catch block or something and it would cause it to come here. Anyway, we've got that. So now we need to return the actual response itself. So what we're going to do here is response.data. So this response comes in here. Remember this here, this byte listener? Well, we can just say byte listener dot on byte array response. Done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create the request itself. So in the onCreate, so when it loads up first, we'll just very quickly make our request work. Okay, I have no idea why the text has gone so small there. Selection mode. Oh cool, it shrinks down the text so you can see all the blocks. That's a cool feature of Eclipse. I never knew that was there, bizarrely. So we're going to ignore this. So what we need to do is we need to create our Volley error listener. So VO dot error listener. Where is it? Error listener. Error listener. Blah blah blah. Import error listener from there. Add unimplemented method. So on error response, handle the error. Blah blah blah. We're going to create our byte array listener. Equals new byte array listener. I'm lazy. And then add the unimplemented method, so on byte array response. And we're simply going to handle a little bit of parsing here. Now technically I should do this parsing in the background, so any parsing of network responses you do in this method here, but there's already a string request, so there's no point duplicating it for the heck. So I'm just going to very quickly turn the byte array into a string. So we're going to say string response or array text equals response dot to string. We're just going to convert the response to a string. It'll all be gibberish, but if we see a text response on the thing, it'll work. Up here, oh god. Okay, so we've got this ready to go. It's got our response ready. So we're just going to very quickly get our text view. Just need to grab the text view from that layout. Quickly grab the text view object. Find the view by ID or .id text view, because we named it earlier. Control-Shift-O, handle imports. I just didn't spell that right. Text view dot set text text. Done. Now we just need to very quickly create the response object, the queue, and ready to go. So we're going to create a Volley or request queue. UQ UUE equals volley dot new request queue. This import request queue. Create our byte array request. So byte array request equals new byte array request, and if we do that, it'll automatically give us our constructor. So we need a request qu dot method dot get, and we'll just change it to that. The URL we'll get in a minute, and we have our byte listener for our listener and our error listener. So we're ready to go. Queue add request, and that'll execute. So now what we want to do is we're going to I'm just going to nip online, find the URL, and be back in a sec. Okay, we're back, and we're just going to very quickly use a get JSON-C. We're just going to set it to load up one video so the text view doesn't explode the whole screen. And max results equals 1 in the URL. So now when we run this app, the main activity will load and it'll make the request off and it'll work. So what we'll do is we'll run it, see what happens. Probably some hidden error I haven't spotted, but we'll see. Okay, Android launch. We're going to choose my emulator. Unlock it. Okay, it's starting. Give it a second. Okay, so it worked. You see the text view change there now. I'll actually make that text view a lot larger and I'll rerun the app just so we can get it. So edit text size. We'll make this like 26 SP. Make it huge. Make the text humongous. We rerun it on the emulator. Now the text itself, the byte array has just been turned into gibberish because we've converted the byte array object to string. It's just going to look like gibberish. We didn't actually parse the byte array into a string properly. So as you can see, I hit my monitor, we just get gibberish on the screen. But the request is being made and it is setting the text view because it has to. So there's a custom request made there and then. Now I've done all kinds of cool things with this before. One thing I did was, because the requests complete asynchronously, you don't know which one's going to return first. So I actually made a custom response listener where it also had a tag response, and each request you could set a string as a tag, or you'd set a tag in the constructor. So what I did was I put a tag, string tag, was brought up here and stored, and then that tag was also delivered back here, which was the URL for the image, which allowed me to keep track of which response was which, because I was making something like 10 different image requests very quickly and they could have executed in the wrong order. They can do all kinds of things. You can set the request priorities to be high, low and medium. So you could say this so in the constructor I think you can say this dot I can't, is a request priority? If I look it up in the Volley toolbox, you can modify the request priority. Here we have image request, that's a low priority. Yep, return get priority, return priority dot low. So if we override that method, we can set the priority to be different on each type of request. So for string requests, we might want the priority to run high. Images then can be loaded afterwards or in list view. The Volley toolbox is really cool, and by modifying it and making your own versions of requests, you could really get a lot of control while still having all of the request queue and the request making and the HTTP nonsense all abstracted away from you. And it's really cool. I really like Google for doing this toolbox. But anyway guys, I'll put this up on my GitHub as soon as I'm finished, so it'll be there waiting for you. And as always guys, it's been good talk, and I'll see you out there.